Terrence Edwards and Kasean Pryor were key in Louisville's bounce-back victory against Bellarmine on Tuesday evening.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my fifth year covering the university, third year hosting this show, and I want to personally take the time to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville, free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. Now, guys, today's episode of the show brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. All you have to do, visit FanDuel.com to get started. After losing to Tennessee by 22 a little over a week ago, the Cardinals followed that loss up with a 32-point victory over the Bellarmine Knights. Kasean Pryor, Terrence Edwards scoring over 20 points each. And Louisville hit the 100-point mark in this game against the crosstown opponents. Personally, for me, it was nice to see the Cardinals bounce back, get into the win column, and move on throughout the non-conference schedule. Fans are excited about the result. Some fans aren't satisfied with how they got there. So we're going to break down this performance in its entirety, discuss the individual achievements, some of the concerns that the fan base has, whether or not they're going to be concerns moving forward, and much more. I think the first thing that needs to be discussed is that Louisville bounced back, and that was one of the main things that I was looking for in the early season. Okay, it was like, it's like a Nike commercial. When adversity hits, how do you respond? Sounding cheesy, but I mean, the merit is there because in the past couple of years, when adversity struck, it was not handled well, guys. You know that because rarely ever when the team got punched in the mouth and knocked down, did they brush themselves off and get back up and keep fighting? Rarely ever, hence why they only had 12 wins combined in 2 years, but that's neither here nor there at this point. But with a new head coach, with a brand new team, and with seemingly a new culture being installed within the program, you have to wonder, okay, there's a lot of positivity in the offseason, but when you get on the court, when things get tough and challenging, when you face adversity, when you get embarrassed, how are you going to bounce back? Because the Cardinals got embarrassed a little bit earlier than planned. The second game of the season, they lost by 22 at home to Tennessee in a highly anticipated matchup amongst the fan base. They didn't play well. They didn't have the lead at any point in that matchup against the Volunteers, and they got embarrassed. They had 10 days off. Some people view that as a blessing, others as a curse, but nonetheless, it is what it is. Louisville had some time to work through some issues, see what went wrong, and try to get going back on the right track. And Louisville did that. Now, it started out slow. I mean, it went back and forth in the game against Bellarmine. I mean, the Cardinals had a small margin of a lead about halfway through the first half, but they opened it up a little bit. They woke up. They led by 21 at halftime. They ended up winning by 32. Now, there was a point in the second half where Bellarmine went on an 11-0 run, but Louisville halted that, and they were able to get the lead out to a comfortable margin again. They won by 32 points. So, again, I think myself and probably everyone else in the Louisville fan base is relieved and excited that Louisville won by 32 points, especially against Bellarmine. Look, I don't really have a problem with Bellarmine, but I think with them throwing L's down at midcourt in 2022 put a sour taste in a lot of Louisville fans' mouths. So to be able to beat them last year and then return the favor with a blowout victory this year just felt good for the fan base. I don't think anyone's arguing over the outcome. I think that people are arguing over how Louisville got there. And more specifically, the things working against Bellarmine that fans don't perceive as going to work against better competition. And that is a very fair point. I believe this to be true. And that's that two things are true at the same time. The first thing is that it's going to be challenging to, but nor will I, overly critique an outcome in which Louisville wins by 32 points and scores 100. That's one of those games where it's like, okay, you can, micro-analyze some things. Like you could put this game under a microscope and find a bunch of issues within. Now, again, things did happen, and that leads me to the second point that is also true, is that this team is nowhere near where they need to be able to get to the NCAA tournament. There was some things that we saw against Bellarmine that was like, ooh, that wasn't all that good. And then you go back and you rewatched it, and I went back and kind of went through it, and I was like, I mean, yeah, that wasn't all that great. Looking back on it, it's not all that great. But here's where I'm at. On November 20th, I saw improvement, put it that way. And we're going to, put a name to that improvement when we discuss the offensive side of the ball coming up here in the next segment. But, you saw the team show some improvement on the offensive side. I think the defensive side is where most of the issues lie at this point. But still, I think you're seeing improvement. So, excuse me, standing alone, the Bellarmine victory was nice to see. I mean, anytime you score 100 and you win by 32, I think it's kind of silly to really be pessimistic. And look, I mean, I'm as critical as they come, right? Like, I mean, people on this show have a running, narrative that I just don't give Louisville credit, and I'm not an optimist. And that really couldn't be any further from the truth, because I look for any reason to be optimistic. But even me, like when Dalton Pence is sitting here saying, ooh, that might be a little bit too pessimistic for me, I think that's going, a little overboard. But here's kind of where I'm at as well, is that it almost put a tear in my eye scrolling through social media last night, thinking to myself, I never thought that we would be arguing and complaining about a 30-point win again. Because the past couple of years, I had to keep my mouth shut about people trying to find positives in consistently losing by 20 points. Like, nothing infuriated me more than saying, I loved the effort there. I loved that guy going for that rebound. I liked how he played in this 4-minute stretch. I liked how, and look, I mean, the merit is there. Like, there's truth in the sentiment. And like, I mean, you're not wrong, but it's like, you're still losing by like 20 points. We've won 4 games last year. We won 8 games total this year. And it gets to the point to where you're like, it's like that meme where it's like Chris Paul hits a huge three to, trim the lead to 42 or trim the deficit to 42. It's like, oh yeah, the effort was good and we lost by 20. So, and I say all that to tie it back into now, just a couple months later, not even a year later, we are complaining about a 30-point win. And it made me smile. It kind of made me giggle a little bit. And I'm like, I miss these times. I didn't like that there was some complaints, because I do think that some of these complaints were very justifiably valid. But I thought it was just kind of funny how quickly things change when you made a coaching change. So it's very clear that things weren't broken like they said they were. But I can't keep coming back to this, but it's still early season, so it's very, very, it's very reasonable at this point. But nonetheless, what I'm trying to say in this segment is that you can be encouraged and critical at the same time. Like I think that this is a system that Pat Kelsey's trying to put in, that it takes some time to learn, and that's something that we have to focus on as well. And we're 3 games into the year. This team is going to look different in January. If they don't, we can hit the panic button then. But I'm not going to hit the panic button on November 20th. You're 2-1. You have 2 blowout victories. Now, yes, you had to be better against better competition, but you've only had 1 game to show that, and that was Tennessee, unfortunately. But it is what it is. So it's a new team. It's a new season. Even with guys coming back, sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get reacclimated. Something that also hurts, Abubakar Traore, out for 6 weeks, around 6 weeks is what was kind of reported. He's out with a broken arm. Corin Johnson had a shoulder injury. He missed the Bellarmine game. I'm not sure what his status is moving forward. I'm hopeful that he can return in the short term because Louisville needs them both. So, and that's going to be something on the Friday episode of the show that we're going to discuss a little bit more is, how Louisville can, withstand the injury bug at the moment and, continue to push through. But that is an issue. So let's stick with this game. And I think what was key, it was nice to see, is Terrence Edwards having a good performance. He scored a game high, 26 points for the Cardinals. It was much needed to see. Kasean Pryor also scoring over 20. Some mixed reviews on the offense, and we'll break it down when we come back on today's episode of Locked On Louisville. Cardinal fans, I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to crawl through a bed of hot coals just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy, no hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I called them on it. Turns out it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. Find out how easy it is to switch to Mint Mobile and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. That's mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. That's $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $50 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Cardinal fans, want to take this time to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, be sure to check out Locked On ACC. The squad meets every Thursday to discuss the week's prior action. A lot of great hosts among the ACC. Be sure to check that out. Episodes debuting every Thursday. Offensively, hard to really critique a performance in which Louisville scores 100 points. It was nice to see. You played Bellarmine, and Bellarmine was 0-4 coming into the game. 2 of those games should have been victories. They weren't. They had a 19-point lead in the last game. They lost. Bellarmine was without their top leading scorer. And it's just a situation where the Knights have to figure some things out, right, before they can be in a spot to where they can take this step forward. But it was nice to see a couple things on Tuesday evening. For starters, seeing Terrence Edwards bounce back from a really tough performance, because against Tennessee, he didn't look all that great. He looked like there was a lack of confidence. He had 12 points against Moorhead, but didn't shoot all that much. He was 2 of 12, 0 of 5 from three-point land against Tennessee. He had 5 points. This game against Bellarmine, 10 of 14, 4 of 7 from deep, 2 of 2 from the line for a team high 26 points. He had 4 rebounds, 3 assists, and had 2 turnovers. He had to mainly at times be the other point guard opposite of Chucky Hepburn because Corin Johnson missed this game due to the shoulder injury. So it was nice to see that shot falling for him. He made a couple of big-time tough shots. At the end of shot clocks, he had some situations to where, he took it to the basket and scored. So hopefully this is the game that sort of gets him going and sort of builds that confidence, because Louisville's going to need Terrence Edwards to be either the go-to guy or one of the go-to guys as they go through this tough first couple months of the schedule, because you have Indiana next week. You have either Gonzaga or West Virginia next week. Duke is coming up. Ole Miss is coming up. Kentucky is on the horizon. I mean, the list goes on. It's not going to get easier from here on out for the Louisville Cardinals, and it all starts with, having some go-to scorers that Louisville just doesn't seem to have right now. Terrence Edwards has to rise into that role for the Cardinals. The other 20-point scorer was Kasean Pryor, 5 of 12 off the bench for 21 points. He was 2 of 6 from 3, 9 of 10 from the free throw line, 21 points, 7 rebounds for the South Florida transfer. Thought he had some good moments. There were times where, I wanted him to be a little bit more assertive around the rim, when he gets it in the post, not to put the ball down, but to just go right up. But it was nice to see him fill up the stat sheet. So those two guys accounted for a good amount, almost half of Louisville's scoring. Chucky Hepburn, best game scoring as a Cardinal. He was 3 of 3 from the free throw line, 1 of 6 from 3, but he had 16 points for the Cardinals. James Scott and Javon Hadley both with 10. And you had also Rain Smith with 9. So the Cardinals ended up with 100 points. They shot 34% from 3, 12 of 35. They made 18 of their 24 free throws, which is good for 75%, and 54.7% from the field as a whole. Excuse me. Now we discuss some of the fan base's concerns. And I think that when you get Koren Johnson back, some of these concerns might dissipate a little bit, but I think some of the concerns are valid, and is that you still saw an offense that was hesitant to take the ball inside. Now, I will say full transparency that they took the ball inside more in the second half of this game, and it was probably more than the previous 5 halves of basketball that the team had played leading up to the second half. Like, you saw Louisville taking it inside, making it a point of emphasis to just get the ball and in the paint and utilize the size mismatch. Bellarmine wasn't the tallest team, doesn't have the largest players, but they were utilizing the size mismatch, taking it inside and finishing around the rim, which Louisville did fairly well. So that was nice to see, but it still isn't where it should be. Louisville has to stop being so complacent among the three-point line. It's getting to the point where I could see Louisville having a lead, but shooting themselves out of the lead due to poor shot selection. Look, I'm okay with taking a lot of threes, but they've got to be good looks. They have to stop being desperation shots and some that, you're taking threes just to take a three. What I kind of saw, for me, when Louisville was at their best, it felt like either Kasean Pryor or Javon Hadley, or I'm trying to think who else played in that role. Kenai Roos. Either those three guys was in the dunker spot down by the low post and getting the ball there and being able to dish it back out. And that's sort of what I was hoping for against Tennessee was, driving in and kicking it back out. That's how you generate the open 3-point looks, because if you're just passing it around the perimeter, 5 out on offense, and you're not forcing the help defense to come up and shift, you're not really doing anything. You're allowing the defense to just sit back and wait for you to run the shot clock down and take a deep shot that's going to be ill-advised. So you have to get that help defense to be able to rotate and then create the space. And they weren't able to do that a lot when they played a lot of 5 out. But when you got players, in the middle, you got a player on or at the dunker spot. You had James Scott in the high post, and he got the ball. And at times he looked uncomfortable with what read, if that first read got, blown up, if the defender, hedged over the ball screen and prevented that first pass on the dribble handoff. It was like he didn't really know what to do after that, but it got better throughout the game, and that's something that I'm hoping progresses. But Louisville's got to stop relying so much on 5-out basketball, because at this moment, what's happening is if you don't have a player down there, what we saw is like Bellarmine, basically, when either Edwards or Hepburn or whoever it was trying to beat their man off the dribble, the help defense literally just slid over. And when you pass it back out, they rotate it back, and no one's the wiser. So I think that it just highlighted again Louisville's need to be able to pose more of a threat on the inside. And there was also, that take of, well, Louisville has really struggled with penetrating the defense and getting into the zone. Now, I will say that was an issue, and that's where I kind of bring Koren Johnson's name back into the mix, is because this is where Louisville needs him to be a player to utilize his handles and get into the teeth of the defense, and then be able to, either kick it out or to be able to score in the paint or be able to find somebody down on the low block. So that's something to monitor here, is that, okay, Louisville had trouble getting by mid-major guards What's going to happen when you play better teams? Well, you saw against Tennessee, you really couldn't get past them. So something definitely to focus on moving forward. But I think that the offense, like I said, the offense is going to be better with more time. Again, more chemistry, more cohesiveness on the court, tighter rotations where Pat Kelsey just, finds out what works and what doesn't in terms of personnel. At that point, I think that the offense is just going to look better as we get more game reps. But I think the defense is where many people are concerned, and I really couldn't blame them after watching the game on Tuesday evening. We'll discuss when we come back on the final episode or the final segment of this Wednesday episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Cardinal fans, are you missing someone this holiday season and want them to be a part of your festivities from afar? Do your loved ones live far away but wish they can be closer to you? Well, we've got the perfect gift for you. Skylight Frame is the touchscreen digital photo frame your whole family will love. Upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear in seconds. It's so easy to use. It takes less than 60 seconds to set up. You can invite friends and family to easily share photos via the free Skylight mobile app or email. You don't need an account or a subscription to get that. And basically, you have a satisfaction guarantee. We're confident that you'll love Skylight. We offer free 120-day returns. And now, as a special limited time offer for our listeners, get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com/college. That's SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/college. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/college. And at this time, I also want to talk to you about our friends and the title sponsor of the show, FanDuel. NFL action continues with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets, FanDuel.com. Louisville currently a 8-point favorite over Pittsburgh on Senior Day coming up this Saturday. Again, FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I think most of the concerns, like I was mentioning, arise from the defensive side of the basketball. Honestly, starting out with rebounding. Louisville barely out-rebounded Morehead State. They got out-rebounded significantly against Tennessee, a team that got out-rebounded by Gardner-Webb. And Bellarmine, it looks different, like it's 37-23, and that's a good margin. But when you look at this and realize that the teams both had 23 rebounds each, less than 10 minutes to go in the second half, it does make you wonder. Bellarmine had 4 offensive rebounds compared to Louisville's 10. And it's an improvement, right? But again, it's not necessarily so much talking about this game in particular. It's more so how it's going to translate to better competition. When you play teams with larger front courts, with stronger front courts. And we saw Bellarmine at times just be better than Louisville in the paint. And I think that rebounding is something that's going to have to be focused on, especially with Abubakar Traore, a guy that might not necessarily be a huge offensive threat, but he's a good rebounder and he's a high effort guy. So Louisville has to be better when it comes to rebounding the ball moving forward. And it's nice to see what they did in the final 5 minutes of this game. Bellarmine, let's look at the stats. They shot 45% from the field, 36% from 3, 11 of 17 from the free throw line. They turned the ball over 16 times compared to Louisville's 9. And Louisville scored 5 points off of those. They scored 18 points off of those turnovers, 5 in fast breaks. So defensively, I felt like at times Louisville's defense was smothering. They were communicating, they were rotating the way they should, and they forced Bellarmine into some shot clock violations and some ill-advised shots, and they ended up getting the rebounds. So that's good. At other times, especially in the second half, Louisville struggled to defend the backdoor screens and off-ball movement. Now, Bellarmine is a team that, even if they're not the most talented at times, you can bank on Scotty Davenport's team being able to move without the ball. Like, they are very unselfish with the way they play. They pass it a ton. When they pass it, they're moving. They pass it, they're moving. And even when they're not involved with the ball, they're still moving. They're setting the backdoor screens. They're setting, the Spain sets to where, you have that secondary screen. And one thing we saw is someone coming down from the low block, setting a screen around the free throw line, and another person basically weaving around the backside, and the help defense was getting caught up in the screen. And what that resulted in was just countless backdoor cuts where guys were running wide open to the rim. They got easy layups. The same thing happened in transition and off turnovers. So it was something that I think, has to get better. And a lot of this, I think, is just going to get better naturally as this team continues to play together, plays, external competition is going to get better. But Louisville left some guys open. Like, if I had, Ben Johnson had 29 points for Bellarmine last night. I don't know how many times I saw Bellarmine set a screen and the help defense basically hedged over the screen, and they went after the ball handler, and it was a pick and pop situation. And Ben Johnson had how many open threes? Bellarmine had how many open threes? Perimeter defense hasn't been the greatest for the Cardinals early on. So that's something that it's going to get more challenging as you play better teams, as you play more athletic teams. So I think on-ball defense, it's not terrible. Louisville does have to be better in the paint. I mean, at times Louisville's defense just is not good in the paint whatsoever. I don't know exactly what you have to do to combat that, whether it's dropping the help defense down and collapsing and then just continually, playing the cat and mouse game to where you drop down and when they pass it out, you're back out there. But you basically just have to do what you can to deny the ball in the paint, because Bellarmine's not the tallest team, and they were scoring in the paint against Louisville. Now, some of them looked like they were just throwing up prayers, but they had 30 points in the paint. So it was just something that Bellarmine scored 68 points, and it's pretty clear that when you play as fast as Louisville wants to play, you're going to give up more points. That's why Alabama gives up a lot of points. That's why Charleston, when Kelsey was there, they gave up a lot of points, because when you're scoring that quickly, when you're shooting on offense that quickly, the other team by default gets the ball quicker. They have more possessions. So more possessions is inevitably going to lead to more points. So that's really not the biggest concern for me. It's just how they were scoring. And defensively, that's where most of the main concerns lie. I think that the rebounding number doesn't look as bad post-game, but go back and look at it when there was about 7-8 minutes remaining. Teams had the same amount of rebounds, same amount of offensive rebounds. So for me, that's a situation that kind of worries me a little bit. Louisville's got to get better in that regard. So moving forward, only thing you can hope to see is that the team gets better. And hopefully that happens against Winthrop, and Louisville is able to start to try to get to a win streak. So that's going to wrap up this Wednesday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day. Whoa. One more thing that I will bring up before we get out here. Rain Smith led the team in rebounds against Tennessee, and outside of a couple of offensive rebounds and such, he was the leading rebounder for Louisville well into the second half. Your 6'2" guard can't be your leading rebounder. Like James Scott, Javon Hadley, Kasean Pryor, Noah Waterman, Kanai Roots, they have to be better at rebounding collectively. That is the last thing that I will say. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.